That was a little too close.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey guys, this is Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia. It's morphin' time.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. And yeah, you heard a little while ago, that game versus the Thunder, the Jazz. Yeah, a little too close for comfort, but nevertheless, the Spurs got a W versus the Utah Jazz. We're going to look back at last night's game, go over some numbers, some general thoughts, who stood out, who didn't, and what went almost wrong for the Spurs, and then look at tonight's game, Spurs-Thunder. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. I was going to bring him on. He is helping me out once again. The man, the myth, the legend, the only man to put the fear into Megatron. He is Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Welcome back, Rudy.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I put the fear in Megatron and Cobra Commander combined.
God, how do you do it?
It's a look. It's a look that I've got. You know, a lot of people out there and listening don't know the look that I've got, but I've given it to a few people so far.
It's your bowling skills. They don't want no part of your bowling skills.
Yeah, they don't want to mess with me on the bowling lanes. That's for sure, man.
By the way, what's the update on that? Have you played since we last spoken?
Yeah, I actually did a little bit better this past time, but not as well. I'm still kind of struggling right now. Kind of in between, kind of little, I guess, hitting the bowler's wall right now. Having some struggles.
Man, do we need to get you a sports psychologist? Is that on the list?
You know, it wouldn't hurt. I definitely could use one right now. I'm only averaging, I think, past couple of weeks is like 205. So I'm way below my average.
Don't let your enemies know this. Your bowling enemies. They may pounce.
But isn't that the part of like sharking people where you pretend you aren't that good? Wasn't that a kingpin?
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Reel them in and then you go in for the kill.
Gotcha. Don't go playing against Rudy if you're in a bowling alley right now, everybody. He might be just trying to trick you into losing some cash. Hey, Rudy. We'll talk about Sweep the League in just a moment. Make sure to follow Rudy on Twitter at Sweep the League. Let's go and dive into it. Last night, the Spurs survived one. Well, they shouldn't have, but they did. They beat the Utah Jazz out in San Antonio, 126-122. The game was got more competitive. Yes, they got the win, but yeah, you know what? It still doesn't feel like a win because the way they won. Does that make sense?
It makes a little sense. I get what you're saying. It was a lot closer than expected. If you look at all the stats, really, I mean, we're going to go over them here in a little bit, but the Spurs pretty much won every statistical category. So you would have felt it should have been a bigger win, but it was that damn fourth quarter. The fourth quarter that you and I always talk about. There's always one quarter, and it seems to be that fourth quarter that just spells doom for the Spurs.
Yeah, look, the Spurs' largest lead was double figures. It really was looking like it was going to be the Spurs' night for playing a complete 48 minutes. And that's something that I was looking forward to in tonight's or last night's game. That is them playing a game where they play 48 minutes of basketball, and they nearly got it until that fourth quarter. The largest lead for San Antonio last night was 20 points. Again, you think with a 20-point lead at max, that should be enough. Everybody contributing, but once again, and look, I know it shouldn't be raining on the parade. The Spurs got a W, yay, but this inability to seem to play a complete game, is this something I think Spurs fans, you, me, are just going to have to live with until this team gets right?
Yeah, you're going to have to live with it. I mean, the thing is you know, we're seeing the players develop a lot more and a lot quicker, actually. I mean, you're seeing players like Devin Vassell who have kind of regressed a little bit. You're seeing the same, development that we've seen out of Keldon throughout the years, but also a couple of the rookies actually coming up with Sohan getting, a good amount of minutes, getting a good amount of playing time, still in the stat sheets, and also one of my surprises that I'm going to talk about later in Malachi Branham. So it's just going to be a type of game that you got to expect, especially when we said it from day one. Talent's going to it's going to overcome, everything else that the Spurs don't have, and that is a lack of talent. They don't have star power. Mm-hmm. Luckily, with Markkanen, on fire tonight, as well as Jordan Clarkson, they were able to hold off Surprisingly, the one guy who I thought would have really given him trouble was Colin Sexton, which he really did, and only had 13 points. So in my opinion, Spurs got really lucky that they were able to fend off Utah Jazz at the end.
Yeah, and look, I get it. The game of runs. That's what they all say, and the Jazz definitely meet their runs. You expected that, but it was just a moment in the late in the game where that 20-point lead is dwindling to 15, and then to 10, and then under 10, and then close as 3, and then you start biting your nails because historically this season, Rudy, this team has shown its ability in a bad way to blow big leads, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen some hot starts by the Spurs team, and then all of a sudden in that last quarter, the fourth quarter, they tend to lose the lead and they lose the game. But normally you see 2 quarters where the Spurs are affected, and it's 99% of the time it's going to be the first quarter because they come out of the gates real slow. They battle back, they take the lead, they make it real close, and they get blown out in the fourth. It's a league of runs. It's going to happen, but yeah, you're going to see a lot of this from the San Antonio Spurs this season, especially in the fourth quarter. It reminds me from back in the day, Charles Barkley, who Spurs fans love, said it one time, and he said it one time, I believe it was on TNT, when he said, "I'm not worried about the Spurs. They always blow it in the fourth." And I remember him saying that, and it's like so very true. Back in the day, the San Antonio Spurs had really bad fourth quarter problems, and it seems like it's, kind of come full circle now these days.
Yeah, look, we're going to go into some numbers in just a few minutes, but the eye test just tells me, well, I think we hit the big one, is this team still needs to learn to play 4 quarters of basketball. They almost lost the game late in the game against Utah. Now the Spurs do move to 11-22. They snapped their 2-game losing skid. So that's good. But just overall, you're liking the fact that a guy like Malachi Branham, little by little, is showing that he was maybe a little bit of a slow start to his NBA career, but he's coming on. He's been looking really good in the last few games, Rudy.
Yeah, the last 4 games, he's averaging, not including this game, 11 points, which is double digits, obviously. But he's getting some pretty good minutes. I'm getting some really good run from Coach Pop, and I'm liking what I'm seeing. He's getting his jumper to be more consistent. Mm-hmm. He's attacking the basket a little bit more. He's being a little smarter with the ball. What I liked saw tonight was the fact that he had the ball in his hand a lot playing point guard. It's able to allow him to rub off screens, get a couple of open jump shots, or actually get to the basket and make a play for himself, maybe draw the foul. But seeing the play of Malachi Branham, especially tonight, is a huge thing for San Antonio Spurs fans. I really like what I saw from him tonight in the past 4 games before this.
Yeah, overall, the eye test, this has that one big sore spot. Nearly lost the Spurs game against Utah late in the fourth period, but we're going to go and start doing that right now. We're just going to dive into the box score and look at some numbers when we get back right here on Locked On Spurs with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League, where Megatron is still shaking in his boots. I don't know how you do it. How do you do it? You're just striking fear in the enemies across not only the bowling alleys, but in nerddom as well. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about Prize Picks. Look, Prize Picks is a daily fantasy app you need to get right now. It's easy to use. Basically, what you do is you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go on to score more or less than their projected Prize Picks projections, well, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport you watch. That includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, boxing, MMA, Euro basketball, cricket, disc golf, and much, much more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's very, very easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in 30 states and in Canada. Here's what you got to do. Download the Prize Picks app right now or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can get themselves a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So basically, if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. You give them $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. We're back with Rudy Campos right here on Locked On Spurs, looking back at last night's Spurs win over the Jazz, and then we're going to take a peek ahead at tonight's game, Spurs-Thunder. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Second listen, check out Locked On Sports today. So, Rudy, let's go and look at some numbers, and we've talked about him to start the segment one. Let's talk, get in depth now. Malachi Branham, 20 points, a career high. He's hit a three-pointer, one or more in the last 6 games, so his shot is starting to fall. What have you been liking out of the kid?
You know, the thing with Malachi is you're seeing the reason why he was a projected lottery pick in this past NBA draft. His shooting, his scoring ability out of Ohio State University. I mean, a very versatile scorer. Once he gets going, as you can tell from the outside, it's very hard to stop him. He can shoot the contested three. He can shoot the contested jumper. What I'm liking is that he was actually on the ball a little bit more. I wanted to see how he did that, how he would play rubbing off screens, coming off of them. You know, trying to see if his basketball IQ is to score first or make that pass. It looked like he was in that second quarter. He was looking to score a whole lot coming off that screen. So that's a very promising thing right there. On a team that doesn't have a whole lot of scorers, you're going to need more scoring. You can't rely on Keldon and Devin. Seeing this out of Malachi is very, very promising, especially with the trade deadline coming up. You're probably going to end up moving like a Doug McDermott, who's another, deep threat, but who would probably be more beneficial to a playoff team. This is the time for Malachi Branham to shine, and we're seeing it right now.
Career high 20 points for Malachi versus Utah in 26 minutes, 7 for 11, 2 for 4 from the 3 line. Also chipped in with 2 assists and a steal and 2 rebounds. And another thing, too, is collectively this team did a better job at getting out of the break, especially off turnovers, The Spurs had 21 points off 12 Utah turnovers, so that's good. They capitalized on those mistakes by Utah. Hopefully they continue that tonight versus the Thunder. We'll talk about that in a while. Hot shooting. We haven't seen this in a while from San Antonio. Rudy, 55% for the game from the field. Rudy, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a really good shooting night for the San Antonio Spurs. Really the only one that struggled tonight was Devin Vassell, shooting 8 for 22 from the field. But again, shooters are going to shoot. If you're a scorer, you've got to shoot the ball. Everybody else shot really, really well. I mean, you had Jakob 6 for 6 from the field. Trey Jones has to get a mention. He shot 50% from the field, 1 of 1 from 3-point range. 3-point shot was going down. They didn't take as many as, the NBA is expecting you to take these days. I mean, Utah took 48 of them. I believe or 43 of them, while the Spurs only took 18, but they made 6 of them. And, that's where they were shooting 33% for 3-point range. So shooting 55% tonight for the San Antonio Spurs is really, really good. What really helped was they dominated that points in the paint. They're taking 74 points in the paint. So, of course, when you're getting those easy baskets up close to the rim, your percentage is going to be really high.
One thing also that I liked from last night's game is the Spurs beat the Jazz in the points in the paint battle. 74 paint points for the silver and black to Utah's 52, getting buckets at the rim, mid-range, midi shots in. That's good to see from San Antonio. Devin Vassell, you brought him up a little while ago. He struggled, but yet led the team in scoring with 24 points on the night. And you mentioned Trey Jones. It's a tradition now, Rudy. We have to talk about a Dookie whenever you're on. But even if you put that aside, Rudy, he still did great. I mean, steadied the team down the stretch when it got dicey. Got the team some 2 key buckets to pretty much put away the game from San Antonio. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Consistent is what we've been calling him all season. And, he's the starting point guard for the San Antonio Spurs right now. 11 points, 5 assists, 5 boards, 1 steal. He's just coming in. He's getting the stats. He's stuffing the stats, the stocking with everything that he can do. He's a leader on this team. And I think in a off season where we figured guys like Devin Vassell would step up to be the leader, it's the unknown guy, Trey Jones, coming in and showing that he can lead an NBA team. Now, again, is he the starter for the future of the San Antonio Spurs? I don't think so, but he did, like I said before, he does deserve a roster spot with this team going forward.
Jakob Poeltl. It looks like he's off that minute restriction, and it paid off dividends. 24 minutes, 6 for 6 from the field, 4 for 5 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 4 blocks, 16 points. Spurs are going to need him. The Spurs are definitely going to need him. They want to pick up some W's. A great stat line for Poeltl, who, again, looks like he is now off that minute restriction coming off from injury. But I want to circle back quickly to Trey Jones. 0 turnovers.
Hmm.
Not a single turnover versus the Jazz. And that's what that to me, that's one of the biggest stats from his line. Yeah, double figure scoring and the assists and the rebounds and the key shots, but to preserve the ball, that's good. That's just really good sign for him in his NBA development. You still think the Spurs need an adequate backup point guard for him, or you think Blake Wesley can be that?
No, I think Blake Wesley can be that guy. He had a lot of questions on. Well, at least I had a lot of questions for Blake Wesley coming out of Notre Dame being drafted this year. I figured he would be at least a 2 to 3 year project, especially in the summer league. You know, he had some really good games in the summer league, but I still thought he was going to be an Austin guy all year. But when he actually got to play in the NBA regular season, he was showing it. He was showing that he
Mhm.
could develop into the point guard, possibly starting point guard right now. But I think Wesley's going to be the backup point guard when he gets back. Trey Jones has just done everything that is expected, probably more than what's expected of him. He's already solidified that role, at least for this season. But yeah, Blake Wesley, he's gonna be a fun point guard. Remember the Antonio Daniel days where he was able
Yep.
to score 16, 17 points really, really quick. Wesley has that same kind of motor, has that same kind of drive. So I expect Blake to come in, play that, and eventually probably take over that starting point guard spot, moving Trey to the backup again.
Yeah, Spurs had 7 players in double figure scoring, a good all around balance scoring overall for the Spurs in the win over the Jazz. You know, bad shooting night for Jeremy Sohan, but 31 minutes, 6 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds, 1 steal. Again, you know, impacting the game in different ways. You know, if he's not getting on the offensive end, still, you know, very key to the Spurs win over the Jazz. And Keldon Johnson, can't forget him, 21 points in 36 minutes, 9 for 14 from the field, 5 assists, 2 steals, 3 rebounds, looking like the KJ of old. 3 shots didn't fall. He took 2 of them, missed them both. You know, good win, a good solid win coming into this game versus Utah. I thought the Spurs were going to be in for a fight, but nevertheless, they proved that maybe, just maybe, with a full 100% healthy squad, they could be that pass. They could topple the Kings the way, well, Rudy Campos topples Megatron.
Yeah, I unfortunately Starscream thought he was the next in line, but little
What?
does he know that I've already overtaken Megatron.
What if your boy Soundwave wants to be second to you?
Soundwave is always my boy. He's as close to me as you are, man. We're all brothers. So
All
Soundwave
right.
is definitely my boy.
All right. Once again, these Spurs get the win 126-122 over the Jazz. Back-to-back situation for the Spurs. They're going to take on the OKC Thunder tonight out in OKC. And that's what we're going to do up next. We're going to preview tonight's contest right here on Locked On Spurs with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about betonline.net. It's your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball to World Cup, we got it all over at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, we can even find those on BetOnline as well. And we got the latest lines on NBA prop futures from the Spurs Spurs player chances of getting that Rookie of the Year award. Yes, Sohan Branham maybe? We'll go find out over at betonline.net. Always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today. You got yourself a mobile device, a computer, a laptop. Do what you got to do to get over to Bet Online. Why? Because that is where the game starts. We're back with Rudy Campos right here on Locked On Spurs. He is with Sweep the League. Follow him on Twitter at Sweep the League. Rudy, they got a back-to-back situation. Back-to-backs haven't been kind to the Spurs this season. They've only won 1. Overall, they are 1-5 in the second game of the back-to-back. But they got the Thunder tonight. What are you feeling about this game? You think the Spurs can do it out in OKC?
You know, this is kind of one of those toss-up games where you get a coin, you toss it up, and you say, you know, okay, heads or tails. Whoever has heads may win. Whoever has tails may win. But it's a key game for me. It's so key because you go back to the first time they played each other. The Spurs dominated the first half. I mean, they were running away with the entire game until the second half started, where they managed to score, I believe it was 34 points in a total of 2 quarters. Oklahoma City came back, beat the Spurs 119-111. And the sad part is there was no Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in that game.
Yeah.
Talking about a guy averaging 31 points a game right now. So with him, Josh Giddey, I mean, this OKC team is definitely not 100%. They're missing Chet Holmgren. They're missing a couple of players, but they are one that will compete, and I think they're going to give the Spurs a little bit of trouble. Gilgeous-Alexander didn't play that first game. I think he's going to have a really solid game, but the one guy that really kills him a lot is Josh Giddey. Giddey seems to be not averaging a triple-double, but he's always close to getting that triple-double every single game, not just against the Spurs. If they can control Josh Giddey, let Gilchrist get his, I think the Spurs will be okay. But it's going to have to take a major defensive stance by the San Antonio Spurs to get this victory.
Yeah. The Thunder, they're coming in winners of 3 of their last 4. So they're kind of a little bit of a roll. They lost to the Pelicans before tonight's contest versus the Spurs. But in the last 3 games, prior to the loss to New Orleans, they rattled off 3 straight, beating Portland on back-to-back nights. They beat Memphis, so not like they were taking some chump teams. They were taking down some bigger, higher upper crust NBA teams. And they took New Orleans to the limit, 128 to 125. So really, really tested New Orleans in that game before they picked up the L. The good news is, though, Rudy, is that the Spurs come into tonight's contest with a 3-game winning streak against the Thunder. Yay, but they also are on a 2-game road losing skid. So, yikes. So, something's got to give there. Hopefully, the Spurs get their 4th straight win over OKC. Now, the good news is that the Thunder in the last, I believe, last 3 games, they've taken fewer 3-point attempts than their opponents. So, the Spurs, you got to defend that 3 line, but it looks like the Thunder are not taking a lot of 3 shots, so hopefully that'll bode well for San Antonio. We don't have the injury report as of this recording, so please keep that in mind as you're listening to this quick preview. But when I look at this game, it's like they gotta have this. They don't feel like you're beating a dead horse here. They're gonna have to play 4 quarters of basketball because Gilgeous-Alexander can explode in any second. If he was on that Jazz team, he probably could have willed them to a W in San Antonio last night. So, and then you got Josh Giddey, as you mentioned. This is a very dangerous OKC team that will sneak up on you. Ask the Pelicans, ask the Blazers, ask the Grizzlies. But it's also isn't this the battle of Wemby? Aren't these two supposed to be tanking? So don't you kind of want an L, Rudy?
If you're the silver and black and you hear the cries of the Spurs Twitter world, you probably do want an L to get Wemby after coming off of a win against the Jazz. But even OKC, I mean, you don't really want to see Wemby on that team because you keep forgetting that they have Chet Holmgren waiting till next year. Holmgren is a definite defensive guy, and he definitely can score from inside and out. So Holmgren-Wemby 1-2 combo would definitely put the league on notice. But I really think if you're looking at one team, it's going to be the Spurs that are probably looking at that Wemby sweepstakes more than OKC. OKC is just a very young team right now. Yeah. They're on the rise. I mean, they've got Jalen Williams as well, who dominated the Spurs last game, I think, with 27 points.
Right.
So, it's a battle for Wemby, but I think the Spurs want Wemby more than OKC does.
Keep an eye on the halftime score, everybody, because if the Thunder are leading your silver and black at halftime, the Thunder, they're 4-0 at home in that situation. So they're undefeated if they're leading at halftime in their own gym. So keep an eye on that. Rudy, it's about that time where you go ahead and regale us with some unknown past Spurs celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Spurs. Now, we've got in Frank Burkowski, we've got in Greg Sutton, we've got in David Wood, David Greenwood. Who else do you have on tap today?
I wanted to go the shooting route today. We've had a lot of great shooters in Spurs history celebrating the 50th anniversary. Why don't we go from as far as Steve Smith to we've even had Trent Tucker, if you remember him from the Knicks days back in the day.
Moly.
You definitely have other guys. I'm going to bring a couple of more other guys. Kids won't know about this guy, but I do. Former Spur draftee, and then he was actually a pretty good star with the Miami Heat. John Sunvold was a 3-point competition participant.
Yeah.
And then who could forget, man? The Spurs drafted this guy too, and he went on to become a champion with the Chicago Bulls. Hit the biggest shot in one of the biggest shot in the Bulls history for championships against Phoenix. When John Paxson, remember he was a
That's
Spur
right.
back in the day.
He was.
Yeah,
he wore
man.
the uniform for a while, right? He played.
He was a Spur for 2 years, and I want to just give a quick shout out because this guy's career never ever panned out, and that's Alfrederick Hughes out of Loyola. He's the one that crashed his car, I believe, on draft night. His season went downhill and his career went downhill with him.
Wow, I haven't heard those names in a long time. You know what name I threw out yesterday that I hadn't heard? Well, I haven't mentioned in a long time. James Anderson.
Oh yeah, former Oklahoma State guy.
What happened to him? I mean, that's a bust. That was a huge bust.
Yeah, I would say he played good for a little bit, but I would say that's definitely one of the busts. Yeah, I would say. I mean, he's no Howard Isley.
Oh my goodness, he was a Spur, but he made his name with Utah, right?
Howard Isley, yeah, he would have made his name with Utah, but even then, you know, I was thinking about it. I went to an old basketball court and I saw that Eric Sleepy Floyd was also a Spur for a little bit. For one season, he was.
You know what? I grew up in that era. I know when the Spurs picked up Sleepy. Reading it in the news. Yes, kids, we have to read stuff in the newspaper. We didn't have internet back then. But for some reason, I don't have memories of him playing. I remember him being picked up by San Antonio. I remember him, in the box scores and everything. But I don't remember ever seeing him play. It's like I have like one of those. What do you call those moments? Like a glitch in the Matrix for me. Like I have a personal glitch in the Matrix. But that's it. But hey, we're done talking. We want to hear from you. What do you think about last night's win over the Jazz? Likes, dislikes. What are your overall thoughts? Something in the box score that we didn't go over. And what about tonight's contest? Spurs-Thunder. Who do you got and why? You can let me know on Twitter at Jeff G Spurs Zone. And you can let Rudy know as well on Twitter at Sweep the League. Rudy, brag about Sweep.
Yeah, Sweep the League comes here every single week. We actually took the week off for Christmas. We'll be back this week. I believe we're recording Tuesday or Wednesday, so we'll release another episode. Again, we just have fun. We talk a lot about Spurs and NFL talk and NFL draft coming up. So just looking for the podcast, wherever podcasts are available, just type in Sweep the League.
Simple as that. Make sure to follow Rudy once again on Twitter at Sweep the League and ask him how he's defeated Cobra Commander Megatron. He'll talk your ear off about how he took him to task. But subscribe to Locked On Spurs wherever you get your favorite podcasts: Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, Kens 5 Plus app, and the YouTube page as mentioned, and many other platforms, even the iHeart and Spotify platforms. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, available on the same platforms you can find Locked On Spurs. For Rudy Campos, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.